Okay, let's see where today's adventure is going to go. I have some potential directions to take this in, but right off the bat, how is your dreaming doing? This image that I made a while ago. When I was making it, I wasn't thinking of this, but right now as I look at it, I kind of go, I have to ask all of us, self included, is our dreaming effective enough to, as it is in this image behind me, to basically penetrate through, burn through, if you will, a clouded kind of energy that is, trying to, obscure from us what it is that is the potential of of how it is and what it is that we can dream about. This is a portrayal in this moment as I see it. Art in the eye of the beholder, and I'm the one beholding it right now in front of you, and so I'm going to just kind of throw this interpretation out for you. Something is afoot, something is amiss, something is trying to cloud the perspective of what nature, we're all a part of nature. Don't you ever forget that. We are made of earth elements. Fire, earth, air, water, spirit. All these parts are what it is that we are. And with any luck, we can allow our dreams to burn through the cloudiness that is being put out there to contain us from what it is that we are meant to do. Today, I'd like to take you on a journey, and this is something that I hope you'll enjoy, because there's some really outrageous stuff to consider here. We'll draw up a chart so we can always kind of, tune into where it is on this journey that we're going. All aboard! Yeah, this is going to be a train journey. Now, if you take a look at this chart here, you can kind of see that everything is sandwiched between this Mars and this Pluto. And there's a couple different ways you can look at this. You could kind of say that, gee, if I want to look at this thing in a clockwise movement around the zodiac, which every day transpires. First Pluto comes up in the morning, and then Saturn and Venus, then Mercury, and then etc., etc., etc. And finally here in the caboose is Mars. But the actual direction that the planets are moving in is counterclockwise. And if we look at it from that direction, Mars is the engineer. Pluto is in the caboose. Either way, it's still this same train that we're traveling upon. And I'm going to first give you a little extra something to look at. And that's this right here, because all of you might not be aware of what sign that the planets actually are tuned into. And I'm doing this because we're going to become the characters on this train ride journey. So the sun rules Leo. There's an energetic quality to Leo that wants to express itself. Venus rules two signs, Libra and Taurus. Taurus is about values. Libra is about how we get along with one another. Saturn rules two signs as well, Capricorn and Aquarius. Capricorn is, the idea of organization and control. Aquarius has an affinity for group energy. Pluto has an affinity to the sign of Scorpio. What are the mysteries that tickle you? What kind of things, have you asking deep, detective-like questions? The moon rules Cancer. How do you feel about things? It's the feminine quality, that resonance with mom and home and all of that. Mars rules two signs as well. Aries, the impulse to begin things, and Scorpio, that deep interpersonal discovery process that we go through with one another. Uranus has a strong affinity to the sign of Aquarius. Mercury, it rules two signs. And the reason I'm showing you these is so you can, choose the glyph that your sun sign happens to represent, or that you might know is one of the major characters in your life. The two signs that Mercury represents, Gemini, how's your curiosity? And Mercury, have you figured out a way to put your thoughts into some semblance of order? Jupiter rules two signs as well. Did you know that? Sagittarius, that far capacity of trying to not contain ourselves within the context of something that's limited. And Pisces, also, if you really tune into Pisces, there is a long distance, deep, penetrating, and profound zone of energy that Pisces represents. And Jupiter wants to, plumb those depths. Neptune has a strong affinity with, you guessed it, that Pisces thing. Neptune is, creative imagination at work. Okay, now, you got all those signs stuck in your head? We'll stop that share. We'll go back to another share here. Our planetary dance that's going on right now. So, on this train, be it Pluto as the engineer and Mars as the caboose, or the other way around, all of us are on board. We have some deep zones of Pisces, with Saturn, North Node of the Moon, Venus, welcome aboard, Mercury in retrograde, as is Venus, but welcome aboard, Neptune, that creative level of, imagination, our dream spaces, the sun, the desire, it's in Aries, by the way, to, be overt in our expression. The moon, how do you feel when the moon glances itself across the sky each evening? Uranus has a couple of different scenarios. One is it can and often does stimulate a certain revolutionary kind of energy, but there's a reason for it. It wants to, shake, rattle, and roll things up, just enough to get us a little off balance so that we might recognize that there's something that we need to wake up to. And this is one of the functions of Uranus. Wake up. Pay attention. Jupiter What is that big picture? It's in the sign of Gemini. So, is your curiosity being stimulated? And finally, Mars. Yeah, being the caboose or the engineer of this train that we're all on. It is moving us with, as the ruler of Aries and Scorpio, forward in the direction of discovering, because we're in Aries now, the potential for something that we have not experienced before. There's some newness that is trying to get our attention. And it's moving toward becoming in opposition to Pluto, which it's already done a couple of times in this time frame that we are in right now. Mars, by the way, is traveling out of bounds. And, there's a lot of different ways I can take this. On this day, which is Sunday, by the way, the 30th, this Mars and this Mercury, they each just transitioned. Mercury, moving retrograde, went into Pisces. Neptune, moving direct, went into Aries. And just for an extra little giggle, I'm going to show you the declinations. This is the declination row. And what declination measures is it measures the distance north and south of the equator. And if you look here at Mercury, or the two planets we were just looking, 1 degree north, and if you look down here at Neptune, 1 degree south. Now, both of these planets are very close together by declination on opposite sides of the equator. That's known as contraparallel. There's a certain dichotomy, if you will, between, how those particular planetary characters interact with one another. But very keen to be observed is they are acting with one another in a unique fashion. And the perspective is they're dancing on either side of the 0 degrees Aries, or the spring equinox degree. When these two characters discover themselves on this train ride, which as yesterday became today, they crossed paths. You might say they gave each other a high five or a fist bump but they sat down in seats opposing each other on this very same train ride. Neptune in Aries, it's feeling, if you will, some level of, excitement maybe. Mercury, whose ideas and whose thoughts and whose ability to communicate in retrograde right now, is having a little trouble, possibly, fabricating a storyline. And these two characters, they're opposite from each other. On one side, Neptune. I want to create, with my imagination, perhaps something quite dreamy. I don't want to be held back by, factors that are going to curtail my capacity to dream something new into expression. Mercury is sitting opposite in retrograde, is saying, you want to put something in expression? Well, right now may not be the ideal time to do that. I'm in retrograde. I'm in Pisces. I'm in that deep zone of unlimited imagination. You know this, don't you, Neptune? Oh, yes, I do, says Neptune. Well, Mercury's, in retrograde is saying, I need some time to actually allow for my thoughts to settle here. I must be sitting on the train that I'm facing the back of the train, because it feels like I've been here before. There's something unique in the experiences of this, like I've seen it before. But in some sense, at the same time, there's a muddleness to it that I'm having a little bit of challenge clarifying. Anyway, these two characters. And right next to that Mercury retrograde is Venus, also in retrograde. It's saying, oh, the experience. And Venus is really happy to be in Pisces. It's exalted in Pisces. It can breathe well. But remember, it's in retrograde. So, even though it has a certain zone of comfort while being in Pisces, it's retrograde right now. So the process of, and they're, a degree apart between this Mercury and this Venus retrograde, is that I may sense, the capacity to want to hook up or communicate with you. Mercury is saying, hold on there, buddy, don't get too excited about that, because it's more than a potential that if we communicate with one another, some of the things that we may think we're saying to each other aren't going to come across as clearly as we had hoped. And yet at the same time, Venus also represents valuation, So if in our interaction with one another there is some, uneven, this is Libra side of Venus saying, if there's an uneven perspective in the values of what it is that we're sharing, maybe we ought to wait a little bit until, things clear up a bit. And they will, It won't necessarily be this week, because Mercury and Venus are going to stay in retrograde all week long. And Mercury's been retrograde for a while anyway. Now, the sun, that powerful energy that's the core of the zodiac system here is in Aries. It's trying to, be something new. In the Aries sign, there's a kind of energy alive. It's percolating, saying, I feel like I need to invent a new me. And I'm not exactly sure what that's going to be. Who am I going to check with? Well, I'm going to check with the engineer or the guy in the caboose, Mars, because Mars rules this Aries element. Well, Mars is out of bounds. It's in Cancer, so it can bring in the potential for, what does home mean to you? Are you in touch with your family, your ancestors, and those kinds of things? But I'm out of bounds. The version of what it is that you, solar core of this zodiac enfold that we all find ourselves within, because I'm out of bounds, I'm going to throw some things at you. I've got this energy impulse, truly Martian, that, has a wild side to it. There's an unpredictability factor in the works that, I don't know whether I'll be much help to you, son, for your recognition of this new you you're trying to live into. So we got a little extra energy going here today. And, we keep going here. The moon, yesterday, the moon did an eclipse with the sun. Started a whole new month-long cycle with an eclipse there at 9 degrees of Aries. And I talked a little bit about this last week, so I'm not going to delve into this, just to let you know that any new moon or eclipse is a sign that change is afoot. And this change it's in the Aries zone. So that driving impulse and at the same time the desire to want to, do something new, experience something you haven't experienced before. This is Aries, is afoot for this particular eclipse that says, there are alternating options here. The change factor. I'm seeing the rear differential in a vehicle working as it goes around the corner. We are in a corner right now, and I could, harken back to that dream thing we started out this consideration with, and the potential dark cloud of energy that's trying to hold us back from dreaming something new. We're in Aries right now. The idea of dreaming something new is correct. You gotta do it. What else have we got? Go Saturn. Now, when I get to Saturn brings up, because it's at 24 degrees of Pisces. It's in a sextile to Uranus down here at 24 degrees of Taurus. Mars is just about to become a 24 degrees of Cancer. And you can kind of see this Mars has a nice trine energy, 120 degrees. And these are sextiles, these ones with the little asterisk in there. Trines and sextiles are when a kind of energy that the characters, remember your character in this, are actually, in some level of trying to fabricate something with a tailwind that says, we want something to transpire here. And so we're not going to stand in the way of it, except perhaps maybe for the fact that I am Saturn. And Saturn is, I got rules. There is a way things are supposed to operate. And yet I am in Pisces, so perhaps, just perhaps, the structure of this rule factor could be perhaps fudged a little bit. But how? How can it be fudged in a Piscean way, which says that, am I going to allow what it is, this is Saturn talking, allow what it is that I know needs to be done in a certain way to be potentially enhanced by this Piscean fluid nature of the dreamscape. What do you think of that? Now let's add something to this. Uranus and Saturn, these are the two basic planetary rulers of Aquarius. So Saturn's there trying to, format some level of meaningful context, the thing. Uranus is shake, rattle, and roll. It's causing disturbance because it is Uranus. It's in Taurus. So where is it causing this disturbances potentially? In the realm of valuation, Taurus. Or at the same time, you could ask yourself, do I value the natural world that I am made of and am surrounded by? And perhaps, if not, the intensity of the Uranus revolutionary ideas may be disturbing us, causing us to say, what I'm visioning as potential for how one tunes in effectively or attunes to Mother Nature. It needs a little, rattling and shaking at the human level, because it, for some reason, appears that there's a significant aspect of humanity that doesn't really have the care or the concern for this planet that we live on. And Saturn is saying, the rules are not meant to upset the golf cart, the carrot cart, the rutabaga cart. I'm trying to establish, a context within which, the rules are going to be able to, allow things to grow effectively between us. Venus is heading toward that Saturn. Remember the between us. It's in the works. Now, Jupiter in Gemini is kind of like, it's not in its happy zone being in Gemini, but it is getting nearer to the conductor or the engineer of the train. What level of curiosity is this Jupiter in Gemini going to stimulate within each of us? I can see the potential for, a message broadcast over the speaker system of the train coming from Jupiter saying, is everybody comfortable on this journey that we're on? Does everybody know their places? Saturn coming in there to say something about that Jupiter. Or Jupiter saying something about Saturn's, always trying to make sure that things are, towing the line, so to speak. And the curiosity of Gemini, it's stimulating people to think, but Mercury's retrograde right now. It doesn't mean you can't think. It means that what you think about might be best contained for a while before you blurt it out. We get to our conductor or engineer of the train. Mars, out of bounds and heading for an opposition with Pluto, which will not complete exactly till the end of April next month, which we're just about to start. And that kind of energy of the opposition of the two rulers of Scorpio, you just have to ask yourself, have the dreams that I've been having been clear enough and not obscured by, I could use many examples, but I don't need to. I think you already understand where that train of thought is going. Pluto, conductor or engineer, depending on which way your train is going, in Aquarius is, as the engineer, Pluto is heading for some level of group conscious collective meaning. It's drawing on a zone, the Aquarius zone, that is about ingenuity, inventiveness, our capacity to, to communicate with the electronic tools that are our avail. And is, it might be, chiming in on Jupiter's message across the PA system saying, who on this train wants to be in a meaningful group together? After all, this is not a ship of fools. This is a train on its way going somewhere that is either driven by Mars or driven by Pluto. I'm going to tell you that it's being driven by both. And by the end of the month, when they're coming into opposition with one another, hopefully we will have a context for appropriate scorpionic discovery of the mystery of why it is that we are drawn together. And, this is that scorpionic tuning into our detective, our shaman, our space of interpersonal connection with one another at a level that we may or may not actually have been aware of, but is so intensely powerful that you can't ignore it. Or, if you choose to, you can, but there will be costs. The other things that happened this week, let's just bounce the chart ahead a little bit. Tuesday, Wednesday, and you can kind of see Venus moving up here into Saturn's zone of influence. And Thursday, and Friday. Well, Friday we have our first quarter moon that takes place here in Cancer. The moon at home in Cancer, Well, there's nothing wrong with that, You just have to ask yourself, first quarter moon, a crisis in action. Well, Aries, impulse, drive, action. Mars, also in Cancer, The action is not that far away. The impulsive drive of life that Aries is stimulating to invent something new, and I throw that invention in because Uranus is involved in this nice trine sextile that is a very powerful signature. And to expand upon this potential at this crisis in action first quarter moon is this Saturn, this Uranus, the two rulers of Aquarius, they're going to bounce in and out very close to this sextile on into next year. So get used to the experience that as Saturn goes through Pisces and then trips into Aries, which it will do, Uranus is bouncing through Taurus and will trip into Gemini. Saturn, the rules, looking for a new kind of rule perspective. Uranus, shaking things up, moving into a realm of curiosity where it says, I'm going to shake your thoughts up in a way that perhaps, that Saturn in Aries looking for something new might discover if there's a willingness to participate in this, and if I'm going to tune into that Pluto in Aquarius up there that's saying we need to get together in a group format so that we can iron out some differences between us potentially. Always on the table. On Saturday, Venus catches up with Saturn. And you'll notice there are 25 degrees of Pisces. And here we have the moon catching up with Mars at 25 degrees of Cancer. The water signs have everything to do with how we energetically, tune in to or with one another or things in general. There's a desire, if you will, in the water elements to find some level of connection. Well, we've got that trine connection zipping back and forth between these things. People, Taurus, have been invited on board from Venus's perspective of how we get along with one another, but from the moon's perspective, because the moon represents the general populace. being what? Dancing with an out of bounds Mars? You know, can you feel some potential restlessness in this? We want to make sure that if Mars is the engineer of this train, or is it Pluto? Let's say it's Mars, and Moon is coming to dance with Mars to say, I have an idea, as to, we just had our first quarter of the crisis in action, so we're going into a phase now where we want to, determine what's the most appropriate direction forward and not get so distracted by all the options. And Mars, energetic Mars, out of bounds in Cancer, is saying, I will give you all the power you need right now to format at appropriate direction forward. Okay. I know I probably talked a little longer than normal, but sometimes that's just how journeys are. And so we're coming to a crossroads. And at the crossroads, we have to say, get out of the way. We're coming through. So, I've given you enough to think about for this week. Where is it that we are headed as a group and individually, but all on the same train? I want you to think about that this week. Allow your dreams to definitely burn through that cloud of disinformation, not misinformation, it's deliberate, that is trying to obscure the reality that we, as beings of Mother Nature, know to be the truth. We are way more powerful and potent than any cloudy disinformation that is trying to distract us from what it is that we know we need to do. Come together, my friends, in whatever format that you find most appropriate to make sure that we are sharing our dreams in this time where we absolutely need, as soul beings, to be with one another, no matter what. That's all I got for this week. I hope you stick with it.